Why TypeScript is the best thing that I learned. My name is Isaac, previous CTO of a funded startup, and I run the checkout team at Pretty Little Thing. Okay, preface. I'm not saying JavaScript is the best language, and I'm not saying TypeScript is the best way to use JavaScript. But it is. This is just my experience of using TypeScript, and how I actually just did a little bit my opinions and beliefs on the language. Okay, so what is TypeScript? TypeScript is a wrapper or pre-compiler on JavaScript, which means nothing if you don't know what JavaScript is. What is JavaScript? JavaScript is a dynamic language. You traditionally have dynamic languages and statically typed languages. The difference between them is basically how they do type checking. Variables are integral to programming, and it's essentially how you allocate memory on your computer to utilize later. So whether you want to remember a number from an equation or a string value, whatever it is. When you build an application, there's traditionally two stages of running it. You have the build compilation stage and the actual runtime. So there's build time, runtime, and they're two separate things. Dynamic languages don't do type checking in build time. They just run. Type checking is basically a process where you make sure the data types that you're using and trying to work with are consistent and actually make sense. If you imagine a computer tried to combine two data types, it's got 1 plus fish, the string of a fish. Like, how's a computer supposed to reconcile that? It's not going to know what's going on. In JavaScript, you don't have to define your data types with your variables. So you could have two variables and you could try and add them together, and it won't fail because there's nothing wrong with it. But then when it runs, it will have a situation where it's trying to add a number to a string, and how's it going to do that? So statically typed languages, you basically have to predefine what data type your variable is. You can't add anything else to it. If you define a number variable, you can't put a string on it. And then every time you try and use these variables, because it knows what data type it should or needs to be, it will break during the build phase if you try and add things that shouldn't make sense. So that's basically the difference. JavaScript, you can hack along and do various different things, but then other statically typed languages like Java, C++, you can't, it won't even compile, it will break before you try. JavaScript has become super popular lately because it's basically the only front-end language really, because all browsers use it. Like, if you do front-end, you know JavaScript is actually that simple. Recently, we've also had Node, which is a backend, well, it's not a backend version, it is a non-browser JavaScript based version. So you can't just run it directly on your laptop, but people do use it mostly for servers. This also kind of rose a little bit in popularity due to the whole serverless architecture, which is really popular at the moment, especially with Lambdas. All that aside, just brief overview of JavaScript and its rise in popularity. And TypeScript is basically a wrapper over JavaScript. So you more or less type in JavaScript, but you have to now define your data types for variables in TypeScript. And what this does is, it will then take what you've coded and convert it into JavaScript, but it does all the type checking at compile time. So it will build the JavaScript for you, but during that time, it makes sure that everything works out properly. Whew, okay, that aside, why did I learn it? I actually learned it on the job. So when I started working with PLT, people were already using it. At the time, it seemed like a popular thing, so I thought it would be a good way to upskill myself. Now, I don't know if I'm biased because I use it now, but I feel like everyone is using it at the moment. So I dug into some data. In 2021, there was a dev survey on Stack Overflow that said it is the 7th most used language, which is kind of crazy because JavaScript is number 1 and Node is number 6. So a lot of JavaScript stuff, and TypeScript can be used on vanilla JavaScript and Node. Also in the same survey, it was 2nd for most desired language to learn. I think Python was 1st, but yeah, that says a lot. Although I do think I'm a little bit biased in terms of thinking it's everywhere. I always see jobs for it. It's not hard to hire for. It's a good thing to be aware of. What do I feel like I benefited from working with TypeScript? You don't get the stupid bugs that you used to get. So with JavaScript, you kind of have to be gung-ho. You can't see the flow until it runs. Like, it either works or it doesn't, which is great when you're just putting something together. But when you're on bigger systems, you have no idea how something is going to pan out until you test everything. So being able to catch bugs before they form is already worth making the shift, in my opinion. Also, because you have to specify the data types beforehand, the IDE support is stellar. Anytime you try and access a variable or go through things, it will tell you everything that it can possibly do because you already have to predefine it. So auto completes, anything involving that, like auto fixes that it can do to your code, so much easier. The IDE actually can work for you way more. By the way, IDE is like the software you're using to code, so I use Visual Studio. That's kind of the whatever, that's the expected thing. The main benefit that I think I got from this is the rigidity that it forces you in terms of systems. With JavaScript, normally on dynamic languages, you can kind of just hack things together. Like I said, you don't have to define your types. When you have to think about what data types of these are going to be before you even start on the structure of your code, you have to be a lot more calculated in how you define your systems. And it might sound like a chore and it limits you, and it kind of does, but realistically, the best systems have carefully calculated limits. Like, restrictions are what actually make systems work. A bit of a dumb example, but if you think about a door, it can only move in one way. There's hinges, that's what moves the door itself. It can't move anywhere else. You can't diagonally open a door, you can't vertically open a door. It opens this way. It's always upright. That's how a door works. It can't work any other way because that's how it's built. It's flexible in the sense a door can go into any other door frame of, the same size, but I've never seen a door on a ceiling or on, not touching the floor or sideways, because it's not gonna work. It's designed that way, and because of that we have consistency, and I very rarely have problems with the door itself. I am aware that there's doors where you open in the middle and they open like a book. I get that, but for this point. So yeah, you don't want infinite customization, you want general flexibility, but rigidity is actually what makes something consistent and usable. And that's the thing that scales. Rigidity scales. And then a caveat to that is also a better understanding of data types and the underlying language itself. So because you have to define the data types, you can only use certain variables in certain ways. It helps you understand how exactly it is that they're being used and how the code under the hood actually works with the machine language. So a bit of an abstract concept, but anecdotally, I don't know if anyone knows French, but on and off learning French for a bit over a year now. I had a French teacher at one point. Sometimes I would say things grammatically inaccurate in French and he'd say, oh, that's wrong because that's not how French would say it. He's like, what was the object of that sentence? And I'm like, huh? He's like, what was the object? And in my English brain, I don't do this a lot because I don't have to when I'm speaking English. We have less rigid grammar restrictions. They have to define things like masculine, feminine. There's a lot of things the English actually drop off because it makes it easier for us to understand. But in French, that would be grammatically inaccurate. I passed GCSE English. It's not that I don't know these things, but it did really take me a second. And you'd be surprised if you're not using it frequently, edge cases will catch you out a lot. Because there's a lot of times I've said something in French that I think makes sense and it doesn't. And because in English, I'm not used to translating it certain way, I'm not even sure how to say it in French properly. I say that to say this, it actually teaches you more about the language. You will learn more about JavaScript by doing this, and you will have a better understanding of how machine code actually works. So to overview the benefits, it is super popular, it is very easy to find jobs for and to hire for. It teaches you better how to utilize systems because you have to be more careful when you craft your restrictions, and it also gives you a better understanding of the language that you're using itself because it forces you to use it appropriately. So I'm not saying it's the best thing in the world. If you already come from a statically typed background, this probably won't matter to you, but for someone that came from a more hacking, dynamic background, this to me was a big learning curve, and I suggest everyone give it a go. Cool. So end of the day, this was just my experience, but I do hope it's useful for someone out there. If you know somebody who's either thinking about learning TypeScript or has finished JavaScript and not sure what to do next, please send them this video so they can make a more informed decision. Thanks, guys.